So currently I'm dealing with a problem that is I don't want to make these videos. And the only person that's making me make these videos is me. So that's part of the problem. Coupled with the fact that I've got a lot of minis to paint and I want to paint them. And the Kellar's Keep project is finished. So therefore, I feel like I'm finished with doing Kellar's Keep. But I want to take all the footage that I've compiled together and at least put it up for posterity for somebody to look at. You, apparently. So here we are with an update, a chance to do an update, and I just want to paint, or at least get things set up to paint. I've got my week off. I've got time to take care of all these things, and I'd rather just not deal with it. So I need to deal with that. This is way too big. Much better. I am going to deal with it, and this is how we're going to deal with it. I'm going to be painting some of this stuff here and looking over my notes, which are horribly out of date. And we're just going to be talking. For you, it's a voiceover. For me, I'm making an effort. So, first and foremost, the thing that I was trying to accomplish was to have a structure that I didn't have to mechanically engineer anything over. That being the case, I wanted to make it just support itself in a sense. So with the diagram that I have, I sat down and figured out, what do I have to do as far as placement for where positions where stairs can go, whether it's the 5-block square or the 3-block square, and knowing that generally there's a mirror to it as well. So if a stair is located in one location, it's probably going to be located in the opposite location, which would indicate this section is higher than the others. Now, again, there's a question about whether or not it's indicating that a quadrant or the center room is higher, or as in Quest 3, is that an up and down scenario, or is that a continual directional of the stairs? Because the mission itself is called the spiral passage. The assumption is it's a drain going down. So how do we make it so that it fits scenarios like the spiral passage, but also it can be just a simple, this section is just going to be up higher? And how will you make it so that I don't have to over-engineer anything and everything, because I am not an engineer. All right, so I'm going to get more into why Quest 3 is the benchmark for how robust you want to be building a multi-tiered system when it comes to Kellar's Keep. I got a rough sketch here, a modified version of the map, so that if you haven't played it, or there's somebody that is playing it, that you're not going to get spoiled by locations of monsters, traps, and any of the fun things that are in some of the interior rooms. So the darker shaded parts are parts that you'll never touch. The lighter shaded parts are the parts that you will be walking through. So that's just that in a nutshell. So when we're looking at the book, what we have is this yellow spot right here is basically where you're going to be starting and entering the quest from. So your stairs are located here, and this uses all 6 stairs from the base game. So it uses the 2 5-block squares and the 4 3-block squares. And you're essentially moving down through the map in this general direction. So it's a nice little clockwise swirly-do. And then, you have the option of going into different rooms and finding different locations there and finding an escape route at some point in time. If you take it as each stair is an indication that you are dropping down in a level, then you are essentially going down 7 floors, because you would be starting on the 7th floor, and then for each stair that you encounter, you're dropping down another 1. So the last set of stairs there in the center is where you'd actually be touching the actual game board from that point. Everything else would have to be elevated up at least that high. That's asking a lot. And if this is what you are wanting to build and construct, the system that I have in place is not going to work for you. You will more likely need to make specialized blocks just to allow you to reach that extreme height. And let's be honest too, 7 stories on a kitchen table with a bunch of friends or children, that's really risky, because again, the board that I have built with the 2-inch walls is blocking a lot of line of sight already. And if you are making that same kind of adjustment going up to 7 floors, again, my blocks are all 3 inches, so about like 3¼ times 7. I mean, do you really want something that's about like 25 inches tall to be sitting on your kitchen table? Is it going to look awesome? Yeah, it's going to look really cool, but it's not going to be very practical, and it's going to be more of a hindrance than it is going to be entertaining, because you're going to have to stand up to move figures around. The more conservative look at this same pattern is this indication, which again, this is still way too tall because it is 6 floors tall, because this is based off of the similar principle of how I'm managing all my quadrants. We start in the 6th floor and we go all the way down. And when we get to that center area, you are descending down onto the ground floor, and there is a door on that ground floor. And then if you go to that last stairwell, that is ascending back up to the 2nd floor. So that whole southwest quadrant can now be floated and is sitting together as one complete unit. The problem there is the northeast corner, as you can see, is split into a 5th floor and a ground floor. Now, again, I haven't put any indication in here as to whether or not you can interact with any of these rooms back and forth. To split that whole grouping apart there's a good potential for problems there, especially if you have an elf or wizard character that is casting Pass Through Rock, in which case, whatever character that's cast on, they can walk through the walls and within that quadrant. So now they would be down on the 1st floor, and the other 3 members are going to be up on the 5th floor, and they can't get back to each other. Another way to look at this is if the stairs are just an indication of just going up and down. So let's start with, you start on the 1st floor. You're on the 1st floor, and first stair you encounter takes you up to a 2nd floor. This is a very, very simplified version of how you can interpret this map. So this layout basically proposes that the northwest quadrant and the southeast quadrant are both the game board itself, and the other 2 are just raised up 1 floor. This still gives you the illusion of verticality, and it still allows for reasonable gameplay within each section. And the stairs, you know, because there's an even number of stairs, you can look at it this way so that it's just kind of a little rolling mess that's going back and forth. Going off of this same pattern, you could reverse that, and now it's the northwest and the southeast quadrants that are higher, and the other two are down lower. For me, the most attainable way of handling this is to treat it as you are entering in on the 4th floor. You descend to the 3rd floor, which is that northeast quadrant, and then you descend to a 2nd floor, which is the southeast quadrant. You descend down to the 1st floor, which is just that outside edge there in the southwest, and then that brings you back up to floor number 2 for basically that center section, and then again that will marry back up with 3rd floor, and it will also marry back up with 2nd floor. Is this a continual descending aspect of it? No, it's not. It is a little bit more practical too. There's a lot of ways to interpret how this particular map operates when you're looking at the stairs. All the other quests that use the stair tiles basically use a stair tile at 1 or 2 points, and that's really it. This one's the most complicated one, and this is the one that is, you know, your measuring stick for how well you're going to do things. Here's a good rough up of what I was doing. As you can see, this is how my elevation essentially worked. Your players are going to start on that high point in the back, as you can see, and you're going to basically be walking down. You're going to counter that 3rd floor. You'll be able to interact with anything within that vicinity. Come down to the 2nd floor. Again, interact with anything out there, and then as you can see there in that front portion of the corner, you're down on the main ground, and then you're going to come back up. Again, you're on a 2nd floor scenario, going to the center. This is kind of the fuzzy part, because here, yeah, I could do like I showed in that other indication of splitting that northeast quadrant. You've got the clearance if you're in a 3-in-1 scenario. You've got the clearance if you're in a 5-in-1 scenario to split that elevation, and either in this photo have the stairs descend down, which means that anything that you have sitting in that top quadrant, you now need to lift off and put someplace else and hope that there's nothing important going on up there, monsters that are still alive, heroes that are running around there for some reason, or whatever else may be occurring in that top section, just to interact with the thing underneath. If I had this set up so that it was all still the same level, they would be able to ascend back up to, you know, that northeast quadrant, and then if they felt like it, turn and go down the hallway and then descend back down onto that 2nd floor there in the southwest. The system that I developed is, I say developed like it's a smart thing. It's a simple concept. I've got my foam block, and I have it set to be a standard size. So it's the size of my 1.5-inch square, plus I'm giving myself a 1/2-inch overlap either to one side or both sides, depending on the hallway and depending on the piece. If it's going overlap on the both sides, that's going to give it more stability, because it's going to lock into the magnet system on either 2 rooms or the outside edge where the railings go, and the room on the outside edge. So that's going to lock it in more. It's going to give it a little more stability. There's also screws and magnets that are centered, and the magnets are basically there so that the walkway pieces can drop in and lock into the center section. It's also there so that the columns can sit on top of it, and with the screw that's in the bottom of those can find themselves in a centered purchase. The common misconception is this will lock in and be invincible, and that's not the case, because they're very much able to be knocked out of the way. I mean, these are not strong magnets, and I only have them connecting to a screw. Now, if I had a magnet connecting to a magnet, they'd probably be holding on to each other a little bit better. And maybe that's the right way to go for you. You can also find probably a different way to get it to actually lock into a colored system or something like that so that it kind of sits into a spot better. That again requires probably more engineering than what I'm wanting to put into it. That's how you can actually have the multi-layer stack up. Now, the higher you go, the more flimsy it's going to be. You know, I've got 3 of them stacked up on top of each other. That's basically getting me to a 4th floor, and you can see how wobbly that is in between the two. I could have made a taller column that is one solid piece that has a much wider base on it that is going to lock in a lot better, but I didn't want to make something that was really going to encroach upon any possible plane area. So I wanted to keep my columns as simple as possible. I went through a lot of different ideas of what the columns should look like. I thought, well, because I'm working in foam material, if I had a solid block that had little wings hanging off of it, that would be good enough. And then I could put maybe, you know, a cap on the top of it. I thought about cutting out the column area to make it an actual playable space because, well, maybe in a homebrew scenario, you'll want to be able to use 2 different floors and be able to walk through those squares. And you could also rotate it and have one side that's a solid wall, so that you could still have the solid wall aspect, but you could still use at least 3 of those sides as a door or as a hallway piece in some way, shape, or form. But that's going to be way too fragile for what my needs are going to be here, so that's not what I did. And I think I've mentioned this before anyway. So I thought the simplest thing is just basically you take your column block and we're just going to make a lip coming off of it. And then where that lip is just where each section can just rest there. So if I'm going with the breakdown of the hallway pieces as I have them, then I need to figure out how my support system's supposed to be. So that determined how many columns I had and to the number of columns. I figured I would have to have some double columns. Triple column would be mostly unnecessary, but some would have to be double columns given particular situations, but single columns would be the vast majority of what I would need. The bridge effect then basically allows all the floors to bridge as well as all the walkways to bridge between all the pillar support pieces. So, and that actually is fairly sturdy. And I gave myself that same 1/2 inch overlap, and that's more than enough to hold up all the positions. It's also right on the edge of all my quadrants where the screws and magnets are, where the walls would adhere to. Because once again, as I explained in the first video, the elevation issue when it comes to how the maps are laid out doesn't say you have a room here and there's a room on top of it. It's not vertical like that. There are a couple scenarios within, I think, even the main quest, and I think it's Kellar's Keep, where you're just using the center room and it's just a column going up and you're supposed to use just your imagination to say that you went up to the next floor. No way I'm doing that. Absolutely not. That's insanity. But all the maps are from a top-down perspective. So when you turn it this way, you're not going to have 2 different information sets for your rooms. Instead, you're going to have your rooms indicated like here, so that when you're looking at it from the top, they're in different locations and it's on a slope. So this room's higher than this room's down lower. if that's a good indication for you. All right, and with that, I'm going to end the video here. Again, this was just a recap on basically why I was building the things I was building them, the challenges that I knew that was in front of me, and how I was going to have to tackle those and make it a modular system still, so that if I'm making my own homebrew or personalized quests that involve stairs, that I can still incorporate that within certain different situations, scenarios. Otherwise, the next video is going to be more about actually constructing the columns and how all that system works. And there's probably going to be a rehash of kind of what I did here, but in more of a practical sense, so you can actually see how things are interacting and functioning there. So again, if any of this is something that appeals to you, or you want to use in your own build, or you want to make a 3D print of it and stick it up on the internet for everybody to steal and use, go right ahead. I am 100% behind that. And clearly, as you can see, there's improvements that can be made to this system. So good luck, and I guess if you watch the next video, you'll see me in the next video. If not, then well, you got this far. That's a thing.